Welcome everyone. We're here at Firaxis Games in Maryland, and I'm Ed Beach, the lead designer of Civ 6, and I'm with...
I'm Anton Stringer. I'm a designer on Civ 6.
And we're here to go through the video that was shown last week at the E3 convention, where we ran through about a 10-12 minute video that showed kind of a quick snippet of your path through a game of Civilization 6.
Yeah, and we were going to have a moderator to help walk us through it today, but I think something happened to him on the way here. I don't know.
Yeah, no moderator. You'll see in the video that our moderator normally is Sean Bean,
Yeah.
but somehow he
Got lost in transit here. I don't know what happened.
horrible tragedy.
Yeah.
So we'll have to do without Sean Bean today. So we're going to start out, and the beginning of our segment is going to be showing you a video that's sort of an homage to Civ, where it's been over the last 25 years. We're in the 25th anniversary year of the Civilization franchise, and so we feel like that's a great place to start out our Civ 6 live streams.
Yeah, a lot of memories for us looking back, too.
In the beginning, the earth was without form and void. The sun shone upon the sleeping earth. Into this swirling maelstrom of fire, air, and water, the first stirrings of life appeared. The seeds of life grew and strengthened, spread and diversified. Now it required but one more ingredient. A great leader. To unite the quarreling tribes, to harness the power of the land, to build a legacy that will stand the test of time. A civilization.
It's really cool to see all those images side by side.
So Anton, which Civ game did you get a Civ addiction started with?
Yeah, so I started with Civilization 3. I was in high school, and my parents were out of town, so I stayed at a friend's house, and me and the friend, we played Civ 3 Hot Seat. And we never got very far. We were always tactically planning ahead, and then my parents got back in town, so we never got to finish the game. But Civ 3 was my first Civ game, and then if you go back a little bit further, Alpha Centauri was actually the first 4X game that I played. So both Firaxis things, so it's pretty cool to be working on 6.
Yeah, and Civ 3 was also the one that I dove into heavily first. And that was when I was working on the Civ 3 Conquest expansion. I did some design work, some production work, a lot of different hats that I wore on that project. But that was a really great way to get deeply immersed in how a Civ game's put together real quickly. So
yeah. One of my favorite strategies back then, which I found out later on the internet, was called forward settling, is to, I'd take my Civ 3 settler out. I would scout out, find out where the AI players were, and as soon as I found their borders, I would send the settler right behind and settle and try to build my own territory as a choke point so that they couldn't get past. But sometimes my culture wouldn't expand fast enough, and my borders would have holes in them, and so they would try to settle back into my lands. I was like, no, I drew a line here. I don't want you back here. These are my lands. So that's when I would have grounds for war.
Hopefully the AI had a little problem with your forward settling. So.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to start walking through the video. Like I was mentioning before, this walks you very quickly through sort of a quick snapshot of a Civilization 6 game. So we'll start in the beginning. You'll initially just have a settler like you always start out with.
Right.
And we'll see the first city develop and then move on from there.
Cool, let's go.
And so it falls upon you to fulfill our people's true destiny. Under your leadership, we shall surely prosper. From the seeds of this small settlement...
Here's our starting city. We're playing as China here. Ed, what do you think of this start location?
It's good because the mountains are going to help you with some adjacency bonuses.
Definitely.
And the river's going to help you with the housing. So I'd say it's solid. It doesn't have any luxury resources nearby.
That's true.
I think that's probably the weakness. Are those whales out in the Ocean?
Looks like there's
Or-
whales out there, yeah.
Yeah, so,
That might-
maybe the whales are something that we're going to want to pull into our borders real quickly, so we have a luxury.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the mountains. They're one of the things that I like to see most in my start locations in 6. And actually, right away, there's a pretty tough decision to make because there's some stone right there, which would be great for a quarry, and that would give us the masonry tech boost. But it's also a great spot for a campus or a holy site because you got those 2 mountains right there.
Right, and I think we'll see later in the video that a holy site does get placed, and I don't think it's where either you or I would have put it. So
Yeah,
we'll talk about that a little bit.
it does. Yeah.
Oh, our empire, our people await your
So moving
command.
on.
Now, the first thing we're going to build is a builder.
Yeah.
And notice that the builders for China have 4 figures in the 3D model on screen, on map. And that's something that we've done with the builder unit is the number of figures in the unit represents how many charges it has. So you can select the unit and look down the user interface and see how many charges it is, but it's a really easy way to tell how many charges it is looking at the unit in the world.
Yeah.
So he'll build a couple improvements, and you can watch that like one of the
We will forge our
builder
civilization
units gets
piece
sacrificed
by
each
piece
time
across the land.
a improvement is made.
Basic
down to
agriculture
3.
provides much
Yeah, there goes the first one.
Nation
Yeah, this is one of my
needs
favorite
sustainability
examples
for
of
our people.
kind of art and gameplay just meshing really well together, where we have a gameplay
Farms
concept
may
that we need to
also be
communicate,
added
and we
over
do it
resources
in the user
such as
interface,
rice
but there's
fields
just a really
to
elegant way to
develop
show
our
it
lands.
in the 3D world as well.
Right, and so after he finishes the quarry here, we'll be down to just a single figure, and you can look at
Quarries
the builds
provide
item down the bottom right corner of the UI
greater
also shows
access to
that.
building materials.
Okay, so now we just got to our first boost in the game. We call them either Eurekas or Inspirations, depending upon whether they're in the science tree or the cultural tree.
Yeah.
And one thing that we wanted to mention, this has been out there on the internet, that we got rid of some technologies from the tech tree. And
I must have taken half and put it in the culture tree, right, Ed?
well, we did, and even that has been a little bit misinterpreted because I think somewhere one of the interviewers that was talking to us heard that we were doing 50% of the technology or something like that and thought that we were losing 50% of the tech tree. Well, that's actually not the case at all.
true, yeah.
There were about 80 technologies in the tech tree for Civ 5. We have slightly knocked down the number of technologies in the tech tree, but then we've added the whole culture tree on top of that. And we went ahead and did a little quick math before we came on air today, and it's actually 50% more progression nodes
Yeah.
than we had in Civ 5. So I think that's a good example of how this game has sort of created a very deep experience. There are lots of areas where that kind of change is evident, and just the amount of different decisions you have to make as you progress through the game is a good example of that.
Yeah, and all of these technologies and civics have their own boost requirements, which is really cool. And some of them, a lot of them are very, map dependent. So it'll, for here, for example, we had stone in our starting city, so bam, that's masonry right away. But we didn't settle on the coast. If we had, we would have gotten the tech boost for sailing, but that's something that we're not going to get, at least not yet. And the civics have their boosts as well, and sometimes a boost in one tree will come from something in the other tree. So it's kind of advantageous to not let one fall too far behind.
Right, and it was only one tile away, the coast.
Yeah.
So it probably would have been a reasonably good idea to slide the city down towards the coast, but you have to remember that when you're next to the water there, you end up losing some of the tiles in your 3-ring radius of your city to being all water tiles. And so ultimately the total size and number of districts your city can sustain is a little bit hampered by being on the coast. So it's an early game trade-off between getting that tech boost and not. Now this map here, there's that island above us, and I actually have never seen what's on that island because we keep running this video and it's always in the fog like that, and no one has ever shown me what's on there. But if there were some juicy resources up there, then I would have said settling on the coast.
Reach your culture
and reaching
across the
your
ocean,
culture
across
over
the
onto that
channel.
island might have been the right way to go.
Yeah. So that's a real bummer, Ed, because now our capital is never going to be able to build ships, right? Like now, this is now an inland city.
Wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is information that has gotten out, but I don't think it's been talked about as much as it could be because it's very, very cool. Because ships can now be built either in the city center or in the harbor district. We couldn't build ships right away from our current start position.
Right.
But once we get to the point where we have, I think it's Celestial Navigation is the tech that allows you to start putting in harbor districts.
Right.
So once you have that technology, then you can drop a harbor down because it would be within 3 of the city center, and boom, the city that's upriver a little bit can actually have a port and start producing ships. And that's just a really cool, fun change that we take advantage of often
Yeah.
when we're playing the game.
It's a nice way to, yeah, especially once you have more map knowledge later in the game. You're like, oh, actually, yeah, I should start cranking out some ships.
Increasing our insight in construction. Our builders' efforts are not in vain. Beyond developing
Okay, let's
the
stop right
surrounding
here. And you can see down the bottom under in the panel that's partially hidden with the city details that we have a bunch of stats on the city. And just real quickly to note that there is a housing capacity of the city.
Right.
It has gone up from 6 that it was initially to 7.
It's been through a couple balance passes, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of thing that we're still tweaking exactly how those numbers are. But so there's like tons of room for this city to add population right now. The 7 sort of serves as a pop cap for the city based on how much housing is there. You get some housing from water, you get housing from buildings like granaries and so forth.
Yeah.
We haven't really given out all the details on that because we are still balancing it, but
Yeah.
we'll be sharing that information soon.
Yeah.
But what happens is as your population number starts to approach that housing cap, you start to slow down in your rate. Eventually, you can kind of creep past the housing cap a little bit, but that's going to ultimately shut down the growth of your city. So you'll have to keep providing housing, places for people to live.
Right.
And then you can't see it at all the way we have the
It's
game
kind of a
paused
tutorial.
right
Let me see
now.
if I
Well,
can-
yeah, there we go.
All right.
Above housing capacity, you can see amenities.
Right.
And that's where we're measuring the local happiness of the city, where we're looking at how much are we providing in terms of luxury resources and other things that are going to make our people feel
Yeah.
special.
Our entertainment
cool,
complex district
entertainment,
later
those kind
on.
of things. And the greater the population of the city, the more amenities you need. So that's going to be a measure of whether you're supplying an adequate number or not, and that's going to affect the overall performance of your cities in pretty much every area.
Yeah, the way I think about it is like, growing your cities isn't just about having a lot of food and farms and stuff. It's this sort of triad of food and housing and keeping your people happy.
Yeah.
We may now make improvements
So
to the
next
city
up, I
itself.
believe we're going to get. Oh yeah, we're building a granary in the city center here. So
Advancements such as
all the buildings in the
granaries.
game go inside districts, and your city center counts as one of those districts. So here we're building our granary and our monument there to kind of some of our early game buildings to get our food and our culture off the ground.
Better the lives of
We
our
wanted you to have a few buildings to build
We
without
are
having
now
to put a
ready to
district in
expand
place.
our reach
Yeah.
beyond our borders.
And now we've created a new settler. So if I were playing this game, yeah, I feel like I'd maybe, depending on where I've scouted, like I might send them to the south. We don't have embarking yet, so I wouldn't send them to that island, and I'd want to scout it first anyway.
I wouldn't send him all by himself like I showed in the video.
Yeah.
I watched this video and I'm slightly terrified.
My
by
Civ
what's
sense
going on
tingled
there.
as well.
Yeah,
I was
I'm
like, wait,
that guy is barbarian meat.
yeah, that donkey's not going to be able to defend himself very well.
Right. So, but
We'll see what happens.
you'll see as the video goes along that it's representative of actual Civ gameplay, but it's not really spot on, because we have to progress through the eras. We have to kind of telescope this thing forward. So there are shortcuts taken, like not escorting the settler, that you'll notice.
These brave settlers are ready to carry our culture into the unknown. The lands before us are filled with untold resources and dangers.
And it looks like now they're going to make the decision to go ahead and settle on the sea, which is going to unlock that nice sailing tech boost, which is a nice way to go.
Gazing
Yeah.
upon the ocean, our new
They're not going to
cities
have as much fresh water being salty body water as if they had settled up on the river there.
Right.
So I might have settled up on the river and waited for the harbor to get the sailing going, but
There's
they,
ways to get the fresh water later in the game as well.
they do have 2 water resources here. So, I think this is a reasonable decision to settle here.
already
so too.
plan on how they may rule the waves. However,
And just like in
Alone
previous
and
civs, you know,
isolated,
it's not your capital
this
city,
new
it's the
city
city that
will
just
not
got off the
prosper.
ground. So it's going to have
To
some
truly
trouble.
thrive, you must become
You know,
one
it's not going to
with
be able to produce as well as your first city right away. So what we do in this game, which is something I often find myself doing too, is to make a trader and send the trader out to go kind of get some help from our more established cities.
And he's going to bring back food and production, which are like the two basic things your early city needs. So,
Exactly.
So the building of the trader here is absolutely the right way to go.
These traders allow us to connect.
And
our
the
people.
other cool thing the traders do
Yeah.
is
Exchanging
We'll
resources
see in just a
between our
second.
Yeah.
cities brings with it great advances.
Yeah, so as you notice, when the trade routes go between cities, they create a road as they move. And that's going to give you movement bonuses. The movement bonuses get better, you know, the later in the game you are. So, you know, that hill, for example, that you just went over, normally our military units would have a tough time getting over the hill. It'd take them, you know, a turn or more. But since there's a road there, they're going to be able to whiz through that really quickly. So this would be a great kind of defensive move even of keeping our cities connected. Like if our capital's under attack, we can send troops from this city and vice versa. You also create roads to your neighbors that you trade with that belong to other players. So, you know, I like to think of establishing a trade route as kind of like a measure of trust. You know, like if I'm deciding to trade with you and we're both in the same game, you know, I'm making a road to you, I'm giving you some money out of this, I'm getting some money too. And, you know, but if things go south, you could use those roads to come and invade me. So you really got to be careful, not just with the economy, but with kind of your military strategy. Like, how am I going to lay out my roads?
I really like this though because I kept finding in Civ 5 where you had to pay the maintenance on roads wherever they were. There was just very little incentive to push out from your empire and hook up to the neighbors.
Right. There was a city-state quest that would get you to do it, but it was kind of annoying.
And that was just the city-states.
Yeah.
It was like the other major empires were always sort of disconnected from you, and you
Right.
had very little incentive to ever connect those. And now you kind of can't avoid it. It just sort of happens naturally, and it just feels good. Okay, so I think the next big thing that's going to happen is that we're going to grow our city to the point where it has a couple extra tiles, and so we have a couple more technologies, so we can put our first district in place. And the first one they're going to choose is the Holy Site, and we're going to see here in a second what the user interface looks like when you're placing a Holy Site. And we'll pause here, and you can see all the little blue sort of lozenge shape UI elements are showing you what the faith bonus would be for placing this district in each of these tiles.
Right.
And there are a bunch that are +2. For instance, the desert tile up in the very upper right corner is a +2 bonus, and that would probably, you know, sort of be my number one choice in a lot of cases, because desert tiles don't give you any yields normally.
Right.
And if you can cover them up with a district, that's sort of a great way to go with them. But we actually have another plan with that tile. They're competing interests here. The Pyramids Wonder that we want to build has to be built on a desert tile. So, and you notice there is another desert up there, but that's 4 tiles away from our city
It's
center.
going to be really hard to get. Yeah.
So we'd have to build a whole other city to get up to that. So if we want the pyramids, we have to leave that +2 in the upper corner free for the pyramids. And so initially I looked at what was done in the video and I was like, they missed their +2 bonus. They only put it on a +1. This was a horrible choice. But I think given where all the +2s are, the fact that you'd have to remove your quarry to get rid of another one, and that's a pretty nice grassland tile on the coast that has a lot of good uses.
It does, yeah.
You know, for instance, if you put the pyramids up there in the desert, you could use the grassland next to it for a theater district. Theater districts get bonuses for being next to wonders.
Right.
So they're actually going to end up putting the Holy Site down towards their other city on just a +1 faith tile, but I can kind of see why they did it.
Yeah, there's no wrong decision. There's just many different, you know, priorities that are competing, which is the best part about the districts and the wonders placement.
Right.
Each with its own focus and distinct advantages.
Okay, so here goes our shrine. You can see it flip from the constructed state to the completed state. And once it's in the completed state, you can build the first level building, which is our shrine. So Holy Site District gets a shrine added. Later in the game, I think we'll see another view of it with this next building on it, which is the temple.
Right.
So that's sort of how the progression goes. Most of the districts have slots for 3 different building upgrades over the course of the game.
Right. One of my favorite visual touches, probably in the game so far, is just so perfect, is you have some little doves flying around the holy site. It just really gives it some nice flavor. And you can hear them too when you zoom in.
And faith in general, that resource is always depicted by the white color, so you can see that the buildings in that district share that color scheme and also are all sort of color-coded white as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
To create true
I think next up is our pyramids here.
Yep, and we've sort of queued up exactly why they're built there. And they jumped right from placing it to we're all done, so there were probably 20 turns that got skipped there, but here we're seeing the animation of what it looks like.
Yeah.
This is about half built right now where we paused the game, and so that's what you would see on that tile. If it was taking 20 turns to build it and you were only 10 turns done, you would see the 50% progress. So that's cool. You can kind of bring your army up against someone else's city, and they have a couple wonders that are under construction. You sort of gauge exactly how close to being done they are based on what the on-map graphic looks like.
Yeah. One of the reasons I wanted to pause here too is the way the pyramids are constructed in the video here. We actually did a little bit of research on this, what's called the internal ramp theory for the Egyptian pyramids.
I didn't know what the name of it was, but yeah.
Yeah, I made sure to look it up right before the stream again, just so I was sure. But yeah, we were actually going back and forth on with the artists about how to show this thing. And there's this theory by several archaeologists, and there's some evidence to support it, that they had these sort of internal ramps within the pyramid that, even with modern day technology, are kind of hard to find. Just because it's so big, and that's what they used to deconstruct. So like all the attention to historical detail is there. Even though the pyramids look very stylized, and we're building them as the Emperor of China, there's still a lot of details.
They're not in the right layout. That was because we had to fit. We wanted them to look grand, and we wanted multiple pyramids. They've always been called the pyramids, and we always just showed a single graphic of a single pyramid. So we decided better to have more than one of them and sort of distort their layout a little bit.
Yeah.
Than just to have a single pyramid, and so not perfect in terms of layout, but we really like what the building animation team put together for us here.
And especially with a whole tile to work with, we can show a lot more detail than we did, for example, in Civ 5.
Yeah.
And that we are capable of true wonders. But our cities do not always need to follow the
Okay,
same
so
path.
now the video is going to start talking about there's some dangerous other peoples inhabiting our world with us, and we might have to protect ourselves, so we're going to put down our second district. Although actually there is a third district. You can see Harbor District attached to our city there already. So, but the second district they show being built is the encampment. The encampment is really cool because you really have to decide where you're going to put it in order to defend your city.
Yeah.
What do you think of the choice of where they put the encampment here?
I actually like it. Kind of like for the same reasons that I liked the road from earlier. It takes up a nice space in between your two cities. So, it might be able to help even if your capital is under attack far away. Your encampment here is going to be able to be part of that battle. So it's kind of covering more ground.
Right, and the reason Anton's talking about that is because once you get range strikes by building walls around your city, your encampment also gets range strikes as well.
Right.
So not only does your city affect everything within 2 tiles, but your encampment can put a hit on any invaders that are within 2 tiles of it. Mm-hmm. So I think you're right, it's good. Normally what I love is like in our first city, half of it was walled off by mountains, and that side was protected. So if I was building an encampment from that first city, I would put it on the other side where the mountains aren't protecting it, and then we sort of have mountains on one side and an encampment on the other. And
it becomes a fortress.
Really nicely fortified.
Yeah.
But building the encampment off this city, and that decision, usually you're going to have to make decisions like that as to which city's going to get which district, just because of the population limits that we have on districts.
Right, you're not going to be able to build everything in every city.
This city that's size 6 can only have 2 districts. It can have the harbor and the encampment. Mm-hmm. So probably, there are other things that need to go into the capital, and so the encampment, even though it might have provided a better fortress type of capability around the capital, this is probably just as good a place to have it anyways.
Yeah.
Creation of this district allows for the greater protection of our people.
So we can see that's the basic encampment without any buildings. Then we add the
Barracks
barracks,
provide
and they
much
just sort of
needed
instant.
combat
Well,
advantage.
I guess here the barracks under
Further
construction and then
bolstering our
finished.
forces.
Okay. And we're going to see a raiding party
Always
come
with
in.
those who wish to
These are some barbarian warriors.
Yeah.
We'll see some different barbarians in a second. And we'll talk a little bit about
There's a lot
how
of
the
fun stuff.
barbarians are put together in Civ 6.
destroy all we have accomplished. Barbarian forces continually prey upon our lands. Thankfully, we are now prepared.
Okay, so let's pause here. Now this is a barbarian horse archer.
Yes, it is.
We did not have barbarian horse archers in Civ 5.
No, we didn't.
And these guys are pretty obnoxious because they can do the whole move and shoot on you and kind of whittle you away from afar. Now the way the barbarians work is, we've talked a little bit about how barbarian scouts work in some of the other live streams and interviews that we've done about how they kind of figure out where your cities are and then come back and report.
Right.
Once they report back to the camp, then the camp decides that it's going to put together a raiding party. And we actually have 3 different types of raiding parties depending upon where the camp's located. So you want to go through that real quick?
Yeah, sure. So there are, I guess, what I call like the melee camps, the kind of standard what you might expect from a game like Civ 5, where they come up. They have melee ground units that are going to attack you. There are other camps that are kind of cavalry camps, and they will have horse archers and other things. So you might not, be dealing with the same barbarian threat every time. And the third type of camp is the naval camp. So they'll come raiding up your coast, which can be a real pain.
And it's interesting because the way we set it up is, in order to get a horse barbarian camp, there has to be a horse resource somewhere on the map within a proximity of them. So
Right. So
if
kind
it's sort
themed
of like
to where
the
they're
natural steppe, that kind of Central Asian area where it's like big open grounds and lots of horse resources there,
Yeah.
the barbarians coming from that area will naturally be more likely to be a horse camp than one of the other types.
Yeah. So even the barbarians, not just the civs, will kind of be a little map dependent and a little bit different every time.
Right.
Our warriors are well trained, but this is just a
Horse archers, though frightening, are not very good in melee, and especially not against pikemen.
Pause right here. This
Yeah.
is one thing that was done sort of for artistic effect to put this video together in time for E3 was they did cheat on the promotions a little bit.
I noticed that.
So if you look at the pikeman there, he has a little 7 on his sort of promotion flag that's
He's
attached to his
really
unit
good.
flag.
He's
Yeah,
like the Sean Bean of.
he is the Sean Bean of
yes.
pikemen, because you can't even get 7 promotions in the game.
Yeah.
You can with our debug tools, which is obviously how this was done. So if you're wondering why he's wasting these barbarians in one shot, that's
That's
probably
part of it.
why.
Yeah.
the enemy at its source.
This actually looks like a nice city spot. It's got some marble. It's got some wheat.
You've looked ahead in this video.
Maybe. I might be setting us up for something.
Yeah.
Victory.
Also, it's right along the river,
People
so we
are
can
secure.
get our housing that way.
No, it's a very good site.
And upon these
And
once
boom,
untamed
we're going to take
grounds,
advantage of it.
our
Yes.
civilization.
And it turns out it's a good thing that we went ahead and settled here when we did, because we're going to finally see what a
new age
neighboring
is
sim
upon
looks
us,
like
and
here
we
in
find
just a second.
ourselves but one part of a larger world. We are no longer alone.
Welcome to the United States of America. If you conduct yourself well,
So here we have the Americans, led by Teddy Roosevelt. We've kind of already done a lot on what America's Civ is and how it's set up. So there was a video just on America that went out, I think, last week.
Right.
So we explained the different unique units and so forth. I think the one thing we wanted to make sure we mentioned today is America has 2 unique units, both the Rough Rider and the P-51 fighter. And that's really unusual.
Yeah.
That's not something you'll see very often. There are a couple more civs that have that same configuration. where we took a unique unit that was particularly tied to the leader for that civ,
Right.
and decided that's going to be part of the leaders era related bonus, so that it would just seemed really appropriate for Teddy to have Rough Riders. So you'll see a couple more civs like that, but don't get used to 2 unique units. It's far more common just to have one with a civilization.
Exactly.
Consider us friends.
This new world.
So there's the city of
presents us with
Washington.
new
He even has a
possibilities.
Washington monument in there.
Yeah. And actually, if people want to look for this carefully, there's a different design for the American palace. It's like a special. All the palaces have a lot of character. We actually have quite a few different configurations for what the graphics are for the palace. So
Yeah.
people might want to study that a little bit.
Our art and our graphics team have done a great job, as is important with us in all the Civ games up until now as well, in making different cultural variations and making special exceptions to make certain Civs feel really right.
Right, and the biggest thing that we've done in that with Civ 6 is all the different variations for the different units. The swordsmen that have 5 different types of weaponry or costumes, and throughout a bunch of our units, you'll see that based on what Civ you're playing. All right, here's our main Diplo screen. We haven't talked about that a lot. I think we're going to dive into it a little bit later, a couple weeks from now, but one thing we did want to point out is we have mentioned the gossip system,
Right.
which is how you get a lot of information from the world. Now, rather than just notifications coming haphazardly at you from the world, you have to actually generate those and get those to come to you because you have sent agents out in the world to find out information. So it's not shown in the video what happens when you click on send delegation, but we wanted to kind of point out that that's how you get that whole game started, where you start to pull in information. Right now, the access level on the Americans is none. We're getting no real information about them at all.
Right.
Send the delegation, though, it'll go to limited, and they're 4 levels up from that. And so that's how you find out a lot about the what's happening in a Civ 6 world. And what's really cool about it is once you have enough of a presence out there and enough diplomatic visibility on different Civs, the game just sort of comes alive, because there's a lot of things that you might not have noticed playing a previous Civ title that happened in the game world, and now you're actually getting reports about them, and it's kind of fun.
Yeah, I've gotten some gossip when playing before, and say like, oh, Teddy's just built a shrine or something. I'm like, oh, is Teddy going for religion? Maybe I shouldn't go for religion. There's a lot of really interesting moments where you're like, okay, you get a little peek into what they're thinking.
Right, and when you get the higher levels of gossip, there's a lot of things that will really actually change the way you're playing the game. If you find that he's starting to wonder, if you know he has a settler that he's about to send out to find a city location, you're like, oh my goodness, he could be grabbing the city location I want next to that river or next to that natural wonder or something.
Let me buy a settler now.
I'm going to rush buy a settler and get him over there, and so it's cool to have those types of intel reports really changing the way you're going to play through a game.
Our neighbors have access to resources we desperately need. A trade agreement here benefits both our people. As our relationships and resources grow, so too must our
Now, this is one of my favorite parts of the video, just because, well, let's talk about the civics first, and then I'll get to my favorite part of the video.
to further steer the growth of our civilization.
But yeah, why don't you pause here, and we can actually spend just a couple minutes dissecting some of these policies. This is probably the end of the ancient era, and
with pikemen and the knights that we had earlier, I think it's probably like medieval times, maybe.
Right, because you're right. We have retainers. That's a medieval
We got a couple
policy.
of the later policies.
Right.
Yeah.
So we got a sampling of different policies here from the first couple eras of the game. Which of those jump out at you as the ones that have been your favorites in all the playtesting we've done?
Yeah, so like 2 of the first policies, I focus a lot on the economic policies. That's kind of more of my play style. So the economic policy is one of the tough choices early on. Is like, do I want God King for 1 faith and 1 gold in the capital, or do I want urban planning for 1 production in every city? And I often find that even if I only have 1 city so far, I'll go for the urban planning just to get some buildings going. But if I situationally, God King can be very useful. Like especially if I don't have a great spot for a holy site, I don't have a lot of adjacency bonuses, but I want to play the religion game, I can pick God King, and I'll be working towards that pantheon really early.
Right.
So those are some of the
Yeah,
things for me.
I use both of them as well.
Yeah.
Urban planning remains useful way later in the game than I thought it was, because just that +1 production in all cities, as you're trying to get second and third cities online, having an extra point of production is actually bigger than you think it is. So
Yeah.
I find that I use that more than I expected to. But God King can be really important if there's like a religious city-state nearby, and you can get some faith out of interacting with them,
Right.
then maybe you don't need God King. If you're playing as a Civ where a religion is not a particularly important part of some of your bonuses, maybe you can skip it. But if you need to beeline to a religion, I like having that option there to get the faith going right away.
For sure, yeah. I also kind of like you don't get a diplomatic policy slot right away, but once you unlock your first government, as we have here, or your first advanced government, I should say, there's this choice between charismatic leader and diplomatic league, and those are kind of both also situationally useful. The league one will, if you're by a lot of city-states, you start sending envoys to them. It lets you count your first envoy as double, which is very useful kind of early in the game. But once you've kind of explored your city-states and stuff, I usually switch back to charismatic leader to kind of get more of a generalized bonus.
Right. And Revelation, we have to mention that's a really important policy, because
Also with the religion game.
that's how you rush to the religion game.
Yeah.
And you can actually slot that in and start getting great profit points even before you finished your holy site. You really need the holy site to found the religion, but
You do, but if you plan ahead, yeah, Revelation can really accelerate you there.
So getting to a government that has a wildcard slot pretty early is an important move.
Or if you manage
no
to
matter
get a
what you're
wild
doing.
card slot in some other way.
Yeah, how would that happen?
I don't know.
We don't know. That would be an interesting idea, though, wouldn't it? Okay. All right, let's keep going.
Beyond
So
military
this
and
coming
economic
up
growth,
after we
there are also
finish
cultural
selecting
needs of
our
people to consider.
policy slate for our government is going to be the part of the video that I
As
really like.
culture
And what I like
advances,
about it
new
is
opportunities
it does a
present
really good
themselves to us.
job of telescoping through time
Yeah.
using our time of day system in actually a way
The
that
theater
you
and
can't really
arts
do
district
directly in
allows
game
our
because it's
people
so
to express
accelerated. But it
themselves
starts out
as
with the
never
movie
before.
here. Right after we build the amphitheater, then the Great Library comes online, and then it rolls right from the Great Library into this whole sort of
The
montage
results
of
Fast forwarding.
fast forwarding through time. So there's just so many good examples of what the game world and the graphics look like
Yeah.
with the evening
Truly, we
and
have
early morning and
achieved
even
a golden
nighttime
age of peace
graphic
and
settings.
cooperation.
Yeah. Just before that, I want to pause here and just point out, you guys probably have already heard this, but like this is the Great Library as it's being built in our city. Like, the bottom left corner, you can see the amphitheater that we just built. Above it, you can see the campus and the library. Not so great now by comparison. And the lake, the oasis there in the background, you can see the shine of the sun as the time of day is advancing, which is just beautiful.
And the Great Library is still really important if you're playing the
But
technology
as with
game.
all things,
But
this
we did consider
golden
that the
age
Great Library is
will
something
last.
that was more of a cultural decision rather
Right.
than a
The ind-
technological one. So you unlock the Great Library by the civics tree.
Right.
And that's if you don't have that culture science balance going, there are going to be opportunities you've lost. I'd like to try for the culture science balance, unless certain civs I play with, I'll skew one way or another. But
Right.
in general, it's sort of the most comfortable to play with a good balance of both.
So now we're in the
Industrial
industrial
age brings
age. Our
great
cities are
advancements,
beginning to
but
change
also
dramatically.
great need for resources.
We still have our districts from earlier,
Cooperation
but we
becomes
have a couple more
competition.
improvements and things coming
We
online.
find our world shrinks.
So in this shot here, to the left of the city center, you can see there's a lumber mill. And then to the northwest of that, we have our fort. We've discovered another civilization up there, so we are kind of like taking defensive measures. You'll notice right next to the fort, Cleopatra there has placed her encampment. So this is like, our encampment was a little more conservative, covering 2 cities. This is a very aggressive encampment placement. And sometimes I will do this because it's fun. Like, you basically, oh, my enemy's that way? Let me put an encampment right next to them.
On the border.
Yeah, so that's another valid choice. And then to the right of our city center is our entertainment complex, which is going to help with those amenities and keeping our people happy.
Yep.
Now, more than ever, we must make the most of what land and resources.
And they're putting an
we do
industrial
have.
zone down here. There's only
This
a +1 adjacency bonus to that, and that's because they're on a natural resources that have been revealed right there.
Right.
I think actually later in the video it reveals them there. It's sort of like the video is a little bit jumping ahead and has some forethought or something about how
It's almost
how
like it
things
knows what's going to happen.
Yeah,
Sean
where
Bean
things-
is a great advisor.
Yeah,
he
he's
just
also
can see it all.
he's consulted the Oracle.
He has.
and found out where the strategic resources are going to go. So
Yeah.
you'll see some oil and coal pop up around the city. Sort of movie magic here.
Industrial district is key to maximizing our production capabilities. But these mechanical marvels require
The
new
workshop
sources
and the
of power.
factory are the first two
Fuel
buildings to
is
go
now
into
as
the industrial
valuable as
zone.
food in this industrial age.
Just starting to build some oil wells
While
on
we
our
are
kind of
fortunate,
outskirt neighborhoods
other
there.
civilizations are
We
not.
haven't done anything extra to
They
protect
view our
ourselves from our
prosperity
neighbor, have we?
No, we got the fort there, but we got nobody in it. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
It might have been the lack of military units that had pushed her over the edge here.
Yeah, that's her agenda. She likes to be buddy-buddy with those strong military players.
Yeah.
And it looks like we just have a single musketman on the border there. She's going to have several musketmen and cavalry all coming at us here.
So we're pretty in trouble in this particular moment. Our juicy cultural buildings and the holy site there, the commercial hub beneath that, they're just all going to get pillaged. We're just in trouble. And then we have another industrial zone up here that's not in good shape either.
Still,
The pyramids are safe though. They kind of got tucked away back there far enough.
not
You know,
just
somewhere
outside
outside this video, we had an army tucked away. I don't know whether they were fighting in foreign lands or just we decided to put them all facing towards Teddy Roosevelt
Yeah.
and had forgotten about this side of our empire. So you'll see here in the empire that we come sweeping back in with a pretty good force.
They were having a parade with the American Army over in Washington there.
That was probably it.
So here, our earlier encampment placement is turning out to be very beneficial. Sean Bean got it as well. And we got some infantry units, which are higher tech. So they're going to be able to clean up these musketmen pretty well, as are the giant tanks.
And just like we were talking about before, about how you could build naval units right out there onto your harbor, that was an example of how military units in a city that has an encampment get immediately built on the encampment. So you sort of have this like built-in muster point outside your city for your army to organize around.
Right.
But in this case, that's really helpful because since the encampment was between our two cities, it let us create new troops that would gain experience very quickly because they were built in an encampment, and they'd be available to defend either one of the cities quickly.
Yeah, they could mobilize very quickly to the front line. So now we've put down that first invasion wave, and we're going on the offensive. So this is her capital of Giza.
must be
She's got a
absolute.
fort there, some farms. But we have our battleship off the coast there. We have our bombers destroying the fort, destroying the farms. And there's our artillery unit. some
And notice
tanks
that
with a flank.
strategic bombing of specific tiles is certainly possible here. And then Cleopatra, she's going to come back in here and tell us that everything's lost, that she's going to surrender to us. But do notice that she is speaking ancient Coptic here. So the team that we've been working with to get voice actors and voice actresses who can speak a whole bunch of different, sometimes very obscure languages.
Sometimes it's been challenging.
Yeah. But they've done a great job of getting selections and voice actors who can pull that off to work with us.
Yeah, and Cleopatra is one of my favorite leaders for the performance that she gives. She's just so distraught, and the reference to the asps is really funny for history buffs.
Yeah, if you don't know what that means, go ahead and look it up. It's
Our
a really good story.
heals and grows more powerful.
So now we're kind of back at peace and trying to get back to business as usual, repairing all our districts and pillage tile improvements.
As our people advance, we realize that our future may hold more possibilities.
So, it's like off the coast, we have our harbor district. We've got roads crisscrossing everywhere. Our pyramids back there, all the spots that we were thinking, oh, that might make a good holy site. They've been filled in by plenty of other things. So all of our space is used. We, made a lot of really tough calls about like, okay, well, should I use this tile for this tile for that?
Than combat.
And I think we've shown pretty much all the different district types just in this one video.
We discover
We've mentioned that there are 12 district types. just for fans to have fun trying to put together that list. It's 12 district types, not including the city center.
Right.
So there actually are 13 district types if you count the city center.
Right.
So I've seen some lists out there. Civ Fanatics has done a great job of collecting information, but it could be tweaked up a little bit. I haven't seen a list with all 13 district types in it.
Yeah. There's some even in this shot that I don't think we've talked too much in detail about.
Right.
Yet, so.
Right. So we certainly haven't given all the
Yeah.
how it works kind of information.
So what's coming up here is one of my favorite it's a very Civ 6 moment for me. We've decided to build the Eiffel Tower, and we've got 2 spots for it, both of which would destroy farms that have been there for generations. So we've got to make a call here. I was like, well, this has been farmland, it's served us very well, but it's next to the city center, we're bustling, we're industrial. It's time for the farm to go, and it's time for the Eiffel Tower to be raised.
Right.
Our true
And we make
potential.
sure that you can get food to your late game cities, but
There are plenty
you
of
don't
other
need
ways.
as many tiles of farmland late in the game as you do
And
early.
achieve greatness.
All right. Well, we are pretty close to being wrapped up on winning our victory here. We just have to choose what final victory strategy we're going to use.
Yeah.
And I think in this game we're doing real well in science, so we're going to go for the space race victory.
Yeah. So
In
the
this
Spaceport
new
district is,
age,
I
our
think, the last
people
district you
truly
unlock,
surpass
and it's specifically for the space victory.
I think you took out some more farmland there, didn't you?
We did, yeah. The farmland's got to go. We're going to space.
Probably don't need your city to grow too much more anyways. Just need to kind of keep it in stasis.
Yeah.
Make sure that it's not starving.
Make sure it's supporting our
the
victory
next
push.
chapter
Yeah.
of our destiny.
All right. So we have until October. So we're going to have to fill some of that time with more live streams, I think.
I think we will, yeah.
So you guys will see us back again periodically between now and October. We really thank you all for joining us today. We'll have to figure out what happened to our narrator and maybe get a narrator back for next time, or at least a moderator.
Right, yeah.
But it's been fun, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks.